the #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.
Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to episode 247 of Costa Rica Real Estate and Investments with me, your host, Richard Bexon. Today, the rainy season is definitely here now. For anyone that I think has been in Costa Rica recently, it's kind of nice. I was in Guanacaste this week and it was actually raining, which is kind of very nice. The country will start to go green very, very quickly. Well, the top half will anyway, because the bottom half has already been green for most of the year. But anyway, today we're going to be talking with James Neale. James actually works here in our office. He's an analyst and data expert here at Costa Rica Investments. So we're going to be talking to James about kind of what the data is telling us, what he's seeing, kind of his viewpoint based on, all the data that he lives in every single day here. So if anyone's ever had an analysis from us or wants to understand kind of like, how we come to some of our conclusions, a lot of that work is actually from James here. So we're going to be chatting with James, as I mentioned, and just asking him questions, about good markets, bad markets based on data. And you can use that data however you wish. We use it quite a bit, but we also use our gut and knowledge of tourism here to make informed decisions. But anyway, if anyone's interested in working with us or would like to even analyze a property, we're more than happy to help out. You can email us info@investingcostarica.com. That's info@investingcostarica.com. You can also just in the description down below, click one of the links and organize the time to meet with one of the guys, as well as the email being there as well. But anyway, let's get straight into the podcast. Good afternoon, James. How are you doing?
Oh, good. Thank you, Richard. How are you?
Good. It feels weird. Always when I interview people here on the podcast in the office, it kind of feels weird because we usually are talking face to face or in the virtual world a lot of the time. But I understand you're in Manuel Antonio at the moment.
Yes, I'm in Manuel Antonio, checking out some of our projects and looking for some other stuff as well. So
nice.
Hopefully the double.
Yeah, I know you've found quite a bit of property that we've bought over the years anyway. So yeah, appreciate your hard work, your tough life down there in Manuel Antonio at the moment.
It's tough life. Yeah, thank you.
One's got to do it. But anyway, James, the first question I love to ask is, there's been a lot of volatility in Western markets recently. And I think it's probably here to stay for the foreseeable future, but what are you seeing happening in the data at the moment?
So I agree with you. I think it's probably going to stay around for a while, this volatility. In the data, I mostly look at, arrival data, which gauges from tourists coming in as well as vacation rentals. And you know what? This year has been a decrease in both of those categories compared to 2024 so far this year in Q1. But, better than 2019, which I would say is probably one of the last years of full reliable data without, the COVID-19 skewing things. Even before COVID was a huge deal, there's still talk and some hesitation from people. So, it's better than 2019. So the general trend is still going upwards, but 2025 so far has been a decrease in terms of arrivals of tourists, as well as, the vacation rentals main categories, such as their average daily rate, as well as their occupancy.
Yeah.
But, vacation rentals have been increasing every month. Vacation rentals keep climbing and climbing. It's kind of loitering around the 40,000 mark at the moment. So That's sort of a quick, brief breakdown without going too specific into what's actually.
That 40,000 mark pre-pandemic, I think, was 20,000. So the number of vacation rentals has kind of doubled here. Again, I always say to people look, if we compare ourselves to the previous years, I call them the steroid eras. We really have to go back to 2019. Costa Rica's numbers are still good. Okay, we're seeing a bit of a reduction this year. I think overall we'll see a reduction of maybe anywhere from, 6 to 8%, I think probably overall of arrivals. Definitely moving back to seasonality. We've discussed that and look at the data. We have a lot of meetings just talking about data, but Costa Rica is still strong. And I still think there's opportunity in a lot of markets here. I just think some markets got, overwhelmed. I think the, Dominicao area, Dominicao, especially Vita markets got overwhelmed. Jaco is probably starting to get overwhelmed as well. Even the Flamingo area is as well. And there's a lot of stuff coming online up in the Playas del Coco. But you'd mentioned there, let's get into a little bit about vacation rental market in Costa Rica. I think you'd mentioned there that the, there's a lot of listings coming online. ADRs are shifting a little bit, average daily rates, and occupancy is dropping. But can you give us just an overall picture of what you're seeing happening?
Yeah. So overall listings are increasing. they are increasing at a slower rate than in 2019, 2000, the steroid era, which you had just mentioned. Back then, we were seeing increases, year over year of 30%. The whole market was growing by, 30 to 40% every year. Now I'm seeing it lower a lot to around 15% it was this month.
Yep.
Again, with ADRs and occupancy, those have been decreasing year on year this year. But what you have to remember is it's been increasing since 2017, I believe, is when we started tracking this. So although it's decreased this year, overall, this is one small little decline on what has been a rather large increase of these variables over the last few years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's still positive, and just because places, are looking bad this year doesn't mean they are. It just
let's be clear. I mean, they're still doing pretty well, if that makes sense. They're still making a lot of money. It's just that, like, if you compare it to previous years, it maybe not as good, but it's still doing very, very well.
Absolutely.
I mean, typical returns, the top stuff is over 10%, probably the mid stuff, 5-6%, and then kind of some of the lower end stuff in not key markets is probably down in the 2-3%. But yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult because you have to understand the market here to understand if you just looked at the data like last year to this year, you'd go, oh, like we're off. And it's like, yeah, but you have to understand that was a peak, but it's still good and still good compared to other destinations. I mean, I think there's like an international investment market out there that tracks all countries throughout the world. And Costa Rica is still one of the highest ones for return on investment for investing in real estate as a vacation rental. I think some of the others were like Croatia and those ones, and Malta, I think, was on there. But Costa Rica continues to lead Latin America. And I think Colombia has started to come on as well. But I mean, you mentioned there a little bit, but like Q1 2025 compared to Q1 2024, how's that looking? Is ADR steady? Occupancy probably is decreasing, which is the tendency, but like ADR is still staying steady in some markets.
Yeah. Actually, in quite a lot of markets, it's staying steady or increasing. So I'm going to throw out a few names of locations. Sure. And La Fortuna and Tamarindo, actually, those are increasing. Those are doing pretty well. Year over year, the ADRs are increasing by 10%. Whether that means the demand is rising or the caliber of rental is increasing as well. It's becoming more of a luxury market. Maybe some of these rentals are, playing to different demographics. That is also another possibility. But then places, as you mentioned, like Uvita and Nosara have seen decreases in their ADRs.
Yeah.
And, they've come down from what's quite high. You can't really compare those two markets. Like the ADR has decreased in Nosara, but that ADR was way up compared to many other markets. Occupancy everywhere has taken a decrease. So I won't mention anywhere because it has decreased in most places, but not by too much. There are some markets that have seen it far more, but overall it's been staying pretty steady, if taking some hits.
What are the areas of Costa Rica? Because I'm sure a lot of people listening to the podcast are interested. What are the areas of Costa Rica that are still performing well, and which are the markets that are hit the hardest?
So hit the hardest, Uvita. That's a pretty clear one that I've seen.
Yep.
I track a lot of data, as I mentioned, and from even the amount of listings year over year in Q1, that's decreased. It's strange that I rarely ever see that. It's decreased by 8, so nothing. It's pretty. Yeah, it's whatever. It's not a meaningful amount, but the occupancy has been decreasing by quite a bit. I think that was roughly 12%. ADR, similar story, same numbers. So that one was a clear outlier in that sense. And ones that stand out, again, I kind of answered my own question with the one before, but La Fortuna just keeps on showing signs for improvement. Monteverde as well. Tamarindo has always seemed strong. And, I wasn't expecting this, but Jaco, it's such a big market.
Yeah.
It's pretty resilient. It seems it didn't really take too much of a big hit, but those are names I'm going to throw out without going too into depth.
No, I mean, we can go into depth. I mean, I think a lot of people here would be interested to kind of know a little bit more. I mean, Jaco is interesting because it also has quite a bit of a local market here as well, which I think is good. So it doesn't just always require, tourists coming in. Yes, but it's also local tourists coming in as well. And I mean, that's the interesting thing of probably, 30 to 40% of the revenue there is probably coming from local ticos. And the rest of it is coming from foreigners. So it's going to be interesting. But what's going to be interesting in Hacko is to see is when all this new product comes online, because inventory is going to double over the next 2 years there. If all these projects do happen, of course. Vita, broker told me the other day, there are over 100 homes for sale between Dominicao and Oaxaca that are over $1 million. So, a lot of stuff was bought there. So, I always say, price meets in the middle of demand and supply, where demand and supply is. And I think we're seeing that in some markets. Nasada got hit pretty hard. I think Santa Teresa got hit pretty hard as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Tamarindo continues to do well. Manuel Antonio does well. Arenal does well, and Monteverde, is outperforming as well. That's an area we're looking to actively invest in as well. And just, it's just an area that wasn't on our market, on our radar. But like once we started to see the hotel data there as well, and the demand data from some of the agencies here, we were like, okay, maybe we should take a look at this. So we are, but it's going to be. Look, I think investing in Costa Rica is always interesting. You need not just the real estate perspective, you also need the tourism perspective, and that's what we do. And most people don't. You have one side that sits on one side and one side that sits on the other, and a lot of the time they never talk. But if you were to guess on how Q2 2025 is going to act, what do you think?
Yeah, so as you said, this is definitely going to be, I guess, educated with the data. This year, Semana Santa, the Holy Week, fell in April. So I imagine April will be pretty similar to March in the sense that we'll see slight decreases in, arrivals as well as vacation rental key statistics. And May and June will take a further hit. So April won't, I think, won't be too impacted, whereas the other months will.
Yeah.
No, that's typical. That's very clear. It goes in sort of a wave, as you mentioned, seasonality. I'm sure you'll be able to explain it far better than me. But, that's typical. And, it's just going to return to that. Whereas April, I think, because of the landing of Holy Week and how everything played out, it will not be as bad.
I agree. When we have the Easter break in March, we see April being like the start of low season. But when Easter is in April, we don't see it until after Easter. And Easter was pretty late in the year this year. So I think, again, April should be a good month, but May and June, I think, are going to be difficult. A lot of the tourism companies that I know and hotels are saying that it's very quiet at the moment in May, demand wise. But I think also a lot of people, I was in one of the country's largest luxury property management companies yesterday that we do some work with. And they were mentioning we're just getting a lot of last minute stuff on high ticket stuff as well. So I think that because of the volatility, people aren't making plans a long way out and kind of pulling the trigger probably a little bit more short term. So we'll see what happens there. So, where do you think, and maybe you've answered this already, but where do you think there is still opportunity to invest in Costa Rica? And what would you invest into as well, based on what you've seen?
Okay, yeah. I like this question because I hear it often when I'm listening in on some of your meetings. But, I like mountainous areas here. I think that is not like super tapped into yet.
Yep.
I understand that the demographic that goes to the Santos region, so Dota, Copay, is maybe a mature demographic than some of the other beach locations. And La Fortuna obviously is big. So like a mountainous region, Monteverde, in that Dota region where it can connect to a beach holiday. That's one of the beauties of La Fortuna, is that it's on the way to Guanacaste if you land in San Jose. It's on the way to Manuel Antonio if you land in Liberia, and that's what you decide to do. Places like Monteverde have that ability as well because it's on the way to Guanacaste. Places like Dota, well, I say Dota, Los Santos region, that whole area can be on the way to Manuel Antonio. There is a loop round that way.
Yeah.
There's so much to see there. It's a completely different experience, which is, why it has so much potential and why I feel, some other guests you've had have a very similar answer. So
yeah, look, I think everyone's looking at the beach, dude. No one's looking at the mountains, and the mountain data is just as good, if not better than the beach sometimes. So yeah, and combining the two, a lot of clients, combine the two. So yeah, I kind of agree on that. It's a bit of a biased conversation just because, again, you listen to a lot of my conversations and are in a lot of the meetings. So you kind of, you have some bias as well. But
Yeah.
Are there any unique products out there? Because again, I always get concerned that Costa Rica is getting a little crusty. Everyone's just building modern tropical, all the time. But is there any unique properties out there, which I think was something that made Costa Rica, unique and, as they said, no artificial ingredients back in the 90s. But like, is there any unique stuff that you're seeing that's doing very well that's not my yurt?
Yeah, well, I got to cross off the first answer onto there. But there are some, when you go on Airbnb, anyone can see this. If you go to Costa Rica and press unique, they even have more specific filters, but they range from things that are considered as bird nests.
Yep.
A thatched roof looking over the Bay of Santa Teresa, I think maybe, or Papagayo, I can't remember, one of the two, with private hot tubs. They're technically unique, and they're like bird nests. They're little pods propped up in the trees, as well as there being actual, tree houses made out of tree. It's like built into a tree in Cahuita. It's crazy. It just has wood everywhere, curved, somehow built through this humongous tree. There are other things that are unique and maybe not what everyone wants, but they are different. That, like renovated buses that are turned into stationary homes. Those do quite well in some places. I understand the appeal of them. They're cool, they're affordable, and they're everywhere. I mean, they
Yeah.
work well, as well as farm stays. Those do surprisingly very well. That's in Ciudad
Farm
Colon.
stays do well.
A farm stay, yeah, it's like a
Wow.
farm. That's it's modern. It's not modern tropical. It's not like a beachy stuff that you see.
Yeah.
Sorry, but it's a farm stay. It's essentially a farmhouse surrounded by sheep farm, and it's very cool.
Wow. And I mean, all these things do pretty well.
Yeah, they do. I mean, it's difficult to compare them with the real big hitters because the best things in the market are always these amazing view villas in top tourist destinations. So you'll never see them when you look at the top 100 listings
Yeah.
in Costa Rica. They're not going to be breaking in there. But when you filter down to some specifics and some regions, these things really stick out to perform well, as
Yep.
well as, you'll mainly see it performing best in its occupancy area. So it'll be full for more of the year just because of its uniqueness.
Yep.
Whether the ADR can, catch up is a different story because, as I mentioned, if it's some converted bus, you can't be charging the same rates, although the occupancy will be decent. So
Yeah.
there's this balance that you need to play, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, it's interesting. We do a lot of analysis where, we're looking at stuff that has high occupancy and they're figuring out like how would we drive that ADR up? I mean, again, just the yurt is a great example there. We started at like $90 and we're nearly, 350 over, the top period here. So, it can be done. It's just understanding what it is that you're looking at. And, because we have such a broad range, and a lot of stuff that we look at, we're able to see that stuff. And as you said there, looking at occupancy sometime is the best thing to do because you're not going to see it in the ADR numbers because it's going to be, or the revenue numbers because it'll be down there. But like the investment is probably a tenth of what a luxury home could be, probably even less. And that's what we look at is how much do we have to invest and what is the return a lot of the time for our clients. So yeah, I mean, like, again, to buy a bus and retrofit it isn't that expensive.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the best ways to, I think, increase the initial ADR, I know you've been taking some steps, is to just get really, really top-notch marketing and, keeping it looking awesome. Because that's the point. People are making their decision with their eyes straight away.
Yeah.
Those first impressions matter. So, if you've got really good marketing for a retrofitted bus, maybe you stand a little bit of a better chance against something that's kind of been taken with a phone camera and just like chucked up on an Airbnb listing. Yeah.
Well, James, this has been great. I mean, look, we could talk all day about data. We do anyway. So, but I just wanted to give the listeners kind of a bit of an idea of kind of, our thought process and get an idea of what's happening in the market. I mean, it's still good. It's just not as good as it was last year. So, and there are a lot of diamonds that are still out there, kind of hidden in the rough. And I think, I'd encourage people to do a little bit more of a unique product. If it's just pure investment. I love staying in my yurt, don't get me wrong, but would I stay in it a week? I think maybe a little too much, but I could because it's very, it's very comfortable. But I don't know whether you want to live in a bus for a week. But like, again, if you're young and like that's what you want to do, kind of go for it. But I mean, my last question for you, James, is if you inherited $500,000 and you had to invest it into a business or real estate in Costa Rica, what would you invest it into? And the answer can't be give it to me.
Yeah, well, I'm going to come out with a bit of an interesting one, probably an answer that's not too typical or thought about. It's still to do with real estate. I would try and rent slash buy these bodegas, so kind of industrial units that are small, and kind of break them up into 10 or so rooms and fit them out with, top notch, or not top notch, but, pretty decent DJ equipment that people can play and record and practice with. So that would include speakers, air conditioning, and, a DJ deck. I say this because, this is a proven product in the UK, and I know it was very popular amongst me and my friends when we were there. And, 24/7, enter when you please, all with codes, and you can just go there, practice, go with a few friends, and it's fun. And I think that could possibly do quite well. From what I understand, DJing is sort of coming up and people are enjoying learning it. You don't have to be the best. It's not going to be most people's professions, but people like being able to do it, as well as it being an activity for a rainy day, which I look for very actively.
It's raining at the moment.
Well, luckily not here. So
that's an interesting one that you say that, James. It sounds like it's like a mini private nightclub inside a warehouse, if that makes sense. Like 10 mini private nightclubs where you go with your friends, you can DJ, have a good time, drink. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's a different one. It's instead of just land banking something in a top area or foreseeable top area.
Yep.
If I had this to just, do something that's cool, passionate, I'm passionate about it, that's something I think is interesting and very unique, even to the whole continent, basically. I'm not sure that exists anywhere outside of the US and Europe, probably. So, it's something new, maybe too new, but it's something I think is cool and is, awesome. Will be useful in the future.
Well, it's definitely probably one of the most different ones that we've had on here. Typically people are just like, I'd buy a vacation rental or something, but I like the uniqueness of it for sure. James, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the podcast. Appreciate you taking the time to join us here and kind of share some of this. Anyone that wants to reach out to us can. All of the contact details are in the description down below. But I appreciate you joining us on the podcast, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Anytime.
No worries. Bye.
Ciao.
Guys, interesting podcast there from James. Again, he looks at all of our data there. I mean, I think the one thing to just bear in mind is it's not as good as 2024, but it's still pretty good out there. So, people keep crying about occupancy. ADRs, average daily rates that people are paying, is still holding very steady in a lot of key markets here. I think it's just occupancy, just because a lot of the stuff looks the same, but definitely the unique product continues to do well. And there are some opportunities in again, the mountain markets, which is where we're investing. So I think if there's any interest in investing in any of the product that we have out there, guys, we do have fractional investments. You can buy the whole thing as well. We've actually just sold a couple of things in Manuel Antonio as well. You can reach out to us, info@investingcostarica.com. That's info@investingcostarica.com. And all of our contact details are in the description down below. But again, if you're enjoying the podcast, guys, please hit subscribe. A lot of effort goes into these things, getting these out every week. And I very much appreciate all of you listening. And it's great to hear your comments and to hear from you as well. So again, don't be scared to reach out to us. And again, there's no obligation. We'll just give you our unsolicited, direct advice sometimes. I'm very brutal sometimes and direct to the point. Just because, again, I think if you're not really in it, like you're not 100% in, it's probably best not to do it in Costa Rica, just because, again, it's business is tough here in Costa Rica. I'll say that. There are easier places to make money, but damn, it's fun doing it here though. So anyway, again, guys, appreciate all of your time taking, and again, all of the support. And we look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Bye.
The #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.